Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about understanding the basics of generative AI. So the purpose for this video and others in this little series are to establish a floor of basic AI literacy. These videos will be very brief, not at all comprehensive, but I will be pointing to additional resources for those who want to learn more. So some basic terminology. Generative AI is kind of an umbrella term for artificial intelligence technologies that can generate text and multimedia similar to skilled humans. By that I mean when it generates text or writing, it's often indistinguishable from that of skilled writers. It can generate images and audio and video that, they're improving every day, but at least at first glance, it's often, wow, the quality of this is really great in many cases. A chatbot is an interface that allows users to have a conversation with a large language model. The chatbot that most people are most familiar with is ChatGPT. A large language model, or an LLM, is a computer model trained on large amounts of text from the internet. So it reads a whole lot of text, it identifies connections between parts of words, then it calculates the probabilities between those connections to generate language in response to user prompts. It's often described as autocorrect on steroids. GPT-4, kind of the brain behind ChatGPT at the time of this video, was trained on about 500 billion pages of text, and it created about 1.7 trillion parameters or connections between parts of words that I talked about. So here we can see an LLM is something like this, only much more complex, and it's kind of the brains behind a chatbot like ChatGPT, and those are both kind of under the umbrella of generative AI. So far I've talked mostly about ChatGPT, but there are lots of other tools out there: Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, Claude from Anthropic. These are image generators, speech, voice generator, lots of different tools out there, and this is barely scratching the surface. Training these LLMs requires a lot of resources. A lot of financial investment. As a result, the best frontier models are owned and operated by big tech companies and invested in by big tech companies. OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Meta. There's an arms race between these companies, and so in order to get the biggest, fastest models with the best performance and with the newest features, they often cut corners in terms of safety and other rules, or there aren't rules in place. And oftentimes, because it requires such an investment, oftentimes if you're working with a smaller tool, it's often the bigger tools in disguise, because generating these quality LLMs is so expensive. Training these LLMs also requires a bunch of text or images or audio, etc., from the internet. And so this can lead to copyright issues when these models were trained on materials that they did not have permission to use. It also means that bias and hate speech that was in the text that they were trained on can appear in the large language model. We'll talk about that in a second. There's also a large environmental cost to training these, and the data warehouses that operate where they do the training, and human resources in terms of a lot of graphic content that needs to be flagged as graphic, and so just keep in mind there's an environmental and human cost to these tools as well. The result of that training is kind of, you can think of it as a wild animal that is both incredibly smart and shockingly stupid. The internet, it's kind of like taking the internet, all the good and bad parts of the internet, and distilling it down into a person that you can have a conversation with. So for example, you could ask it, how do I build a bomb with household items? Or help me write a scam email. And the LLM can do those things, but there's fine-tuning and further training by humans where they try to teach these LLMs appropriate and polite behavior, and they call that alignment, trying to get the behavior of these LLMs aligned with human expectations. So some side effects of the training and of what they can do now. There are some hallucinations where they just kind of make things up, and so part of that is because they favor fluency over factual accuracy. They're more worried about appearing to be right than about whether they're right or not. And the performance can vary based on the quantity and the quality of the training data, and that's especially important for languages other than English. The vast majority of the training data that these things were trained on is in English, and then so however much of a particular language these LLMs were trained on, you can expect the quality of its performance in those languages to kind of be appropriately proportionate there. That said, in my experience, these are surprisingly good at many tasks in many languages. Even if you don't expect it to do much in your language, it often can do more than you might expect. I think it's important to think of these things as general purpose technologies. They can do many, many different things. I think of it kind of like a Swiss Army knife in that it can do many things, but it can't do everything. And just like what we see in this picture, it still requires a human that knows how to use them effectively to use them. And I think this is especially important when working with students. And so in the next video, I'm going to talk about some guardrails to use of these tools.